Right, let's get this started. So, welcome everyone again. My name is Dhaval. I'm the product manager here at UGREEN, and today we'll be actually diving deep into NAS virtualization, how you can consolidate all your servers into your SMB environment into a single location, which is your NAS. So, again, for small businesses and medium businesses, you can simplify your IT by running virtual machines directly on a Ugreen NAS rather than having a physical service. Many SMBs today are dealing with multiple systems, rising IT costs, even rising power your electricity bill as well, right? The more servers you have, the higher electricity bills there are, and limited resources as well. So our goal today is to show you how you can consolidate, simplify, and scale your system using one powerful solution, which is Ugreen NAS. All right, so first of all, what is virtualization? So let's start with the basic, right? Virtualization allows you to run multiple operating systems like Windows, Linux, Ubuntu on a single physical device, which is, on this case, is an NAS device. Each virtual machine runs independently with its own resources like CPU, RAM, HDD, applications, and environments. And so instead of needing a separate hardware for each task, you can centralize everything into one system, keeping the workloads isolated and secure. So, um, and with our UGOS Pro, there's a hypervisor built into the system, so you can virtualize everything and run multiple systems in one single location. So if you have small applications like DHCP servers or DNS servers or Active Directory services, you don't need to have separate systems for that. You can just virtualize them because these systems are not high demanding applications. So instead of running a physical computer for that, why not run it on the device on the NAS itself? Right. So benefits having a NAS-hosted virtualization, right, or VM. For SMB customers, virtualization on NAS brings key advantages. First is reliability. Your NAS is designed to run 24/7, making it perfect for always on services like backups, servers, or automation. Second, performance. Since your data and applications are on the same systems, you eliminate network bottlenecks and improve speeds. So everything is in a virtualized environment in the same system. So if your VM requires data from the NAS, because of the virtual switch, you can just all the data remains within the same device. So you don't need to host your data for that VM or the VM itself on a separate hardware, and all the data crosses your network just to transfer from a single system to another system. Everything stays within that same system. And third, cost savings. You reduce the need of multiple PCs or servers, saving a hardware power. So as I mentioned before, now since the cost of power has gone up significantly on many cities and states, saving a lot in power can also help save costs as well. And maintenance. Again, you only have one hardware to maintain. The rest of the computers are virtualized, so you don't need to maintain those hardware at all. And so hardware that is built for performance. So with Ugreen NAS, it's designed for virtualization in mind, especially the higher end units. You get a powerful multi-core Intel processors that can handle multiple workloads simultaneously. So our higher end processors can actually be up to 10 cores and 12 threads. So with that performance, you can actually add multiple VMs running together at the same time. Remember, most of the VMs, like smaller applications, may not even require high-end VMs. So you can just run it in you can just run a DHCP server or DNS server with just 2 core or even a single core CPU, and everything works fine. So similar with that, you can run multiple VMs directly on the NAS. Memory is also another part, right? It's expandable up to 64 gigs of memory, which is DDR5. Base is already 8 gigs, so you can actually run a single VM or even a couple of VM on the base system already. And then if you want more performance, you can just add additional RAM and add CPU, or sorry, add memory into your existing VMs. You can also have a high-speed SSDs option and 10 gigabit networking, which ensures smooth performance even for demanding business applications. So with NVMe SSDs, you can actually host your VM on NVMe SSDs, so you can take the faster performance of NVMe drives and then put them into the NAS, and ensure that you have smooth performance. And also with 10 GB networking, if your VM requires to have internet connection or needs to host or needs to contact another server on the network, you can just give them a 10 gigabit networking connectivity and it will be able to do fast transfers between those servers. Again, flexibility is also something really huge for virtual machines. So again, it's a biggest advantage as well. You can install your virtual machines on the system on a fast NVMe SSDs for quick boot times and responsiveness. So again, tiered deployment, right? So you can install the VM on the NVMe SSDs and can actually add hard drives from your hard drive for additional storage on the VM. So the VM OS can run faster, and then for if you need capacity, you can add them into from the HDD pool. Right now, that feature is in development. That will come very soon. Another thing is SSD caching. So if you don't want to run, if you have multiple VMs and we don't want to carve out your NVMe space into multiple pieces for different VMs, you can just use SSD caching. So whichever VM needs read and write performance, it'll just use SSD caching for that. Um, and then all flash performance. If you just want to keep it into extremely fast, you don't need additional capacity, you just need fast performance, you can just add them, or you just run the VM directly from the NVMe drives and everything runs perfectly fine. So you have a combination, or you have flexibility of what you want to do. Run it on a VM, run the VM into the NVMe drives, run the VM into HDD and use SSD for caching, or you can do hybrid where you have the OS on the NVMe and then the capacity on the hard drive. And flexible resource allocation as well. With virtualization, you're in full control of your resources. You can assign CPU cores depending upon the workload needs, right? You can start with 2 cores, and if that is not enough, you can add additional cores into your VMs depending upon your needs, right? Physical hardware, you cannot add CPU cores. If you need to add more CPU cores, you need to upgrade your CPU, and that's a physical device. Allocate more RAM for heavier applications. Instead of so if you just need more RAM into your unit, just add that using using the virtualization, and just add more RAM if you need more RAM for your resources. You can also dedicate storage and network interfaces to a specific virtual machine. So you're really flexible on storage volume as well. Just you can, if you need 120 gigs, you can start with 120 gigs. If your VM starts to grow, add more drives or add more storage into that VM, and it's that simple as that. And network interface as well. If your VM is not resource intensive for networking, you just add 2.5 gig networking, or if you need more performance, you can add 10 gigabit performance as well. Advanced protection and portability. So with RAID redundancy, we have, in case if you have a drive that fails, your data is still safe because of RAID protection, right? You have RAID 1, RAID 5, RAID 10, RAID 6. So if you have multiple drive failures on some RAID systems, you can still have your data still available and seamlessly running. Snapshots quickly allow you to roll back in previous state if something goes wrong, like accidental deletion or system issues. So um, with virtual machine, you can take multiple snapshots just like your backups. And then if let's say if your virtual machine gets corrupted, you can just roll back that VM into a previous state, just like system restore, and everything goes back to that previous state with the whole OS and everything runs smoothly back again. This ensures that your virtual machines and business data are protected and recoverable in case if you need to. And again, you can seamlessly export into another device as well. You're not vendor lock-in system. So if your infrastructure grows, you can cleanly export your VM into another system or another bigger UGREEN system as well, keeping your VM, your data, everything running smoothly. Secure access and sharing. So this is where virtualization really shines, right? In today's flexible work environments, remote access is essential. So if you want to access your VMs remotely, you need to set up let's say if you want to access your physical devices, like physical computers remotely, you need to install a physical, sorry, not a software, like a TeamViewer software or remote PC softwares that are paid software sometimes, and you need to add additional subscription fee if you want to access uh, access the computer remotely. But with VM, everything is available with UG Link service. So with UG Link, you can have access to your NAS. With that access, you can just access your VMs, and you can access all the contents inside the VMs, and the whole operating system is virtualization available at your fingertips. There's no complex networking setups required, no port forwarding, nothing like that, making it easy for SMBs to enable remote work, support teams, and access systems on the go. And then direct external access. You need to collaborate quickly. And if you want to give access to your VMs to another customer, which is not your regular customer and is not a part of your NAS's user, you can just give them access to that VM by sharing a link to that VM, and they can access that VM and all the contents inside that VM quickly and easily. So let's compare with traditional servers, right? Hardware costs, as I mentioned, lower hardware costs because you're just buying one hardware, and virtualizing multiple VMs on that hardware. Again, with separate servers, you have a higher cost of buying a computer, buying a system, and also power consumption as well, right? It's lower power consumption because it's one system. And if your VMs are turned off and they're not being used, NAS will actually put the drives in sleep mode, so everything is now quiet and you're saving more power. With separate servers, if you have multiple computers, like 2 or 3 computers, you have to, they are all using that power for keeping it running. But with with virtualization, everything is on that NAS. So the NAS is the only one that's consuming the power. Everything else is just virtualization. Storage access is direct and network dependent. Right. What I mean by that is, if you want to, like if your VM requires more capacity, if they want to access something in the shared drive, you have to give them access to the NAS, and through the network it has to go to the data will go through the network to that physical computer. But with VM, everything is in the same system. With virtual machine, oh sorry, with virtual switch, everything stays within that same system. So your data never leaves your network, and it stays within that system because it's all virtualization right there. Management, it's a single platform management, right? Everything is running on that single platform uh, with the UGOS Pro. But with separate servers, if you have multiple computers, they need to be managed separately as well. Have subscription, a remote access subscription for that all that computers. But with UGOS Pro, nothing is required for subscription. And Windows or Linux ready. So the virtual machine app supports both Windows and Linux environments. You can run Windows for business applications, remote desktops, and legacy software. If you have a lot of legacy software, you can run Windows 7, Windows XP, Windows 10, Windows 8, all that legacy OSs, and you can keep running your legacy software. Or if you just want to run some testing, you can just install. You can install a quick instance of Windows 7 and just run that testing if you wanted to, all within that same system. Or you can use a Linux web service development environments or lightweight services if you want to run something within the Linux system. This flexibility allows SMBs to adapt to different workflows, and requirement is easily met. So again, if you want to run any different type of OS or any different type of applications, you can easily virtualize it with the virtual machine application. And what about some use cases? So these are some small use cases that I mentioned. So there are practical use cases for running virtual machines on a UGREEN device. So these are some real use case scenarios where SMB users can benefit right away. So home labs and development, you can create an isolated environments to test your software, run different operating systems, or practice deployments without affecting your main system. If anything breaks, you simply reset the VM, right? So if you're running a home lab and you want to test something, you can just virtualize it directly on the UG NAS or UGREEN NAS, and everything is working. Even if you just break it, you don't have to worry about it. You can use snapshot to recover data back, or just destroy the VM and reset the VM and start all over again. Now, if you're testing something and you don't want to you don't want to affect your main network, just disconnect internet from that computer and everything is running isolated. Smart home automation. Run platforms like Home Assistance, Homebridge on your NAS. Like Home Assistant, we actually have an application. But Homebridge, you can actually also run it in a virtual machine itself, and then you can connect that to your home assistant so everything is running smoothly. Since NAS runs 24/7, your automation stays reliable, right? Everything is running smoothly, everything is running online. You don't need to turn off your VMs, everything is running online 24/7. It's perfect for smart homes or even small office automation. Custom network services. You can run services like firewall, VPN servers, or ad blocking tools like Pi-hole directly on the virtualization. This gives you the better control and security over your network without extra hardware. So you run pfSense firewall, you can run any different types of services directly from your virtual machine. Legacy application support. Run older Windows environments to support legacy applications and that don't work on modern hardware. Some modern hardwares or modern computers um, do not need to or do not support the latest hardware, right? Like there are no drivers available or there's some issues with that hardware. You can run all of that via virtualization, everything runs smoothly. This is very useful for older businesses, software like accounting or POS systems, right? Now, some accounting software, they don't support the newest hardware. And then you're running an extremely old hardware, you can just virtualize it and keep running that accounting software or point of sale software into that environment. And importing your existing VMs. So if you already have virtual machines, you can migrating is very simple. UGREEN supports common formats platforms like VMware or VirtualBox. You can move your existing environments without rebuilding them, saving time and effort. If you want to move your data directly from your system, you can just move it directly from that and just run it directly on the NAS and don't need to reconfigure everything. Your data is still safe, your OS is still safe, everything is still running. And UGreen offers range of NAS models to fit different needs, right? We have entry-level models that is good for running small VMs, lightweight applications, and basic application, right? Our DXP 2800 Pro, again, it's an entry level, but packs a lot of hardware. It has Intel N100 CPU, that has 4-core, 4-thread processor, 8 gigs of DDR5 RAM. That's actually an error right there. Actually, DDR5 RAM, which is a maximum of 16 gigs of DDR5. So extremely fast RAM as well. Two M.2 slots, so still can run VMs on the SSDs, and two HDD slots with one 2.5 gig LAN port. So again, still not a base hardware, has everything that you need to run a good virtual machine. Then we step up to our DXP 4800 Pro, which is an Intel i3 processor now that has 6-core and 8-thread processor, 8 gigs of DDR5 RAM, maximum of 96 gigabytes of DDR5 environment. One still has two M.2s and four SATA SSD drives. You can run concurrent VMs, Windows Server testing, moderate home labs environments directly on that single NAS. Now you can support multiple VMs on the same device because of the 6-core 8-thread processor. And our higher-end models, which is the DXP 6800 Pro, 8800 Plus, has Intel i5 processor, has 10 cores and 12 threads of CPU with 8 gigs of DDR5 RAM, maximum of 64 gigs of DDR5, expandable. Two M.2 slots, 6 or 8 base for high bandwidth, 6 or 8 base SATA for high bandwidth, and has support for 10 gigabit networking for high bandwidth networking as well. Heavy virtualization workloads, nested VMs, ProMark clustering, enterprise database, everything can be run directly from that particular device because of the 10-core CPU that it has. So again, we have hardware available for every different type of system that you can run directly from the NAS. All right, let's look at some live demos. So give me 1 minute. Sorry about that. Let's get started. So I'm hoping that you can see my screen. So this is our NAS interface. I've already logged in. So to install or to run virtual machines, first you need the virtual machine application. So just go to the App Center and you can search for virtual or virtual machine, and this utility pops up. So just click on open. If you haven't installed, install it, and it will ask you if you have multiple storage options. So if you can look at my storage first, it has two storage pools. One is for the M.2 and one is for hard drive. So it will first ask you where you want to run the virtual machine. I would recommend running it on the SSD if you have that available. If you're using for caching, you don't need to matter. or it does not matter much. Once you install that, let's first create a VM. So first you can actually import a virtual machine. So if you have virtual machine that you need to run, or sorry, you're running on a different device, you can run it, you can export it directly from that. It's supported format. You can see IMG, VMDK, QCOW2, and VDI. So those are the environments you can upload from that. So if you have an image, just uh, put it directly from the NAS, put it on your storage on your computer, and just upload it directly to the NAS. Or you can also upload from OVA files as well. But if you want to create a new VM, just click on Create Manually. Now, with this system, you need to actually import an image directly from your computer. Or if you have it saved on the NAS, you can actually upload it from the NAS as well. To upload something, you just click on Upload Image Manually. I already have two that is uploaded, but if you want to add another image, just click on Add Image, and you can directly do it from the local computer if you have an ISO file, or from the NAS if you already uploaded from the ISO file. So um, I would recommend from the computer, don't upload it to the NAS because it'll create another copy for it. So just upload it from the local computer and it'll just have one copy from it. All right, so, or you just, once you upload it from the NAS, just delete that data from the NAS. So it's just one copy directly from that. So once you have the local image uploaded, we're just gonna go back here, select Windows 11, which is a ISO file, hit next. Now it's gonna ask you where you want this VM to run from. So right now I'm going to run it. If you have M.2, if you want to run it on the M.2 drive, you can just select volume 1 or whichever volume your M.2 is on. And then volume 2 would be your hard drive, but I'm just going to select volume 1, hit next. Now, this is where it's going to start adding the system resources. So system type, we can start adding information about what system type it is. You can save Linux, Windows 7, Windows 10, Windows 11, or server, or other Windows that is not listed in this list. You can, if you have it something that is not listed in this, you can just type Windows others, or if you don't have a Linux or Windows environment, something else, you can just click on others. Doesn't matter much, but let's select Windows 11. Now, if you want to run more fast, if you want to have more performance out of the VM, we recommend running Word I/O devices, right? So if you scroll down here, the image type right here, sorry, the disk image, you have the SATA IDE Word I/O or SCSI, right? So Word I/O actually gives you better performance. So you can select Word I/O, but that requires a driver. So you need the Word I/O drivers as well. I'm going to show you how to do that. So if you select Word I/O here, you can select that. Now networking, so you cannot change this after the VM is installed. So let's say, for example, you initialize the whole VM and everything's running, the Windows is running inside the virtual machine application. You cannot change this after the fact because that requires resetting the whole data on that, right? So it cannot change that. So I recommend selecting this before and do not change that. You can add additional hard drive as well and later on if you want to add more capacity, or you can change the capacity here as well. But select Word I/O if you need to. On the network, you can actually select Word I/O from the start or from the get-go. The only problem is that in Windows 11 installation, it does require you to now have internet connection. So, and because the drivers are not installed, it will fail on the internet connection. And then I think there are ways to get past it, but again, I'm not going to recommend that because it's not officially recommended by Windows. But you can get away with that. But if you don't know how to, I would just say just use the default one, let it run, and then once you actually, because you can change the later on after the fact. So once you go back, so for example, right, I'm gonna go back here. This is, let's say you already set up this VM. You can just click on the three dots and go to settings, and then you can actually change the disk into the network into Word I/O, because you can change that after the fact. And now, once the VM is set up already, and sorry, Windows is set up already, you can then install the drivers and your VM has networking again. So that's just something, a quick tip. Sorry, let's go back and add a new VM again. Should have finished the setup first, so go back, select Windows type. Now, this is where you can add the CPU cores depending on the processing power, how much processing power you need. You can add CPU cores. You can also add memory as well. And then if you can also add additional image. The only reason you want to add additional image is let's say, because remember I told you about the word IO for the disk, right? So if you select this as word IO, it will try to, it won't have drivers, right? So you need to add drivers. So you can find the drivers on the word IO page, and I'm going to put that link in our YouTube channel when we upload this video. But if you want to find out, you can actually click on the view tutorial and it will open this particular page. And there is the guest tool package. You can click on that, it will download that. It's an ISO file. So once you download the ISO file, you can just upload them into the VM. And actually, it does have the instruction as well. So if you miss this particular demo and you want to find this, how to do all of this, you can just you can just follow this instructions and it will go through that process as well. So let's go back to that. So you can download it from here and upload that into the Word IO. So you have now two images. One is for your Windows VM and the other one is Word IO. If you want to add additional hard drive, you can do that here as well. And then if you want to add additional networking, so if you want network 1 or network 2, you can add that as well. And you can select which networking bridge you wanted to host this from. You can actually add as an NAT, or you can actually do it as a bridge as well and share your main network's IP address with this. And we'll get a new IP address. So once you've selected all of this, you can also go back to advanced. And if you want to enable USB, so if you plug in like an for example, like flash drives or external SSDs or a USB controller that you need to pass on to the VM, you can actually do that here as well, and it will start communicating to that USB. You can select which graphics you need to select. Um, Recommended is VGA, but you can also do Word IO here as well. Um, but first, make sure you install the Word IO drivers before you switching over the graphics. You can also do bootstrap type, so UEFI, the newest BIOS, or the old version of the BIOS. Now you cannot change the setting after the fact, so you make sure you select this before. Auto start. So what happens is so if the NAS is booted, so for some example you forgot to turn off the VM and you reboot the NAS, or if there's a power loss and the NAS is rebooted, when the NAS comes back online, the NAS will boot the VM with it, so your applications start running again. So you can do all of that here as well. And the keyboard language, you can select the keyboard language if you wanted to have a different language. So I'm not going to start that. I already have set up a VM. So now if you want to run the VM, it cannot run within this particular software. So it will actually force you to open up a browser. So click here and it will open up a browser here. And from that browser, it will start loading into the VM itself. So once the VM is loaded, remember the word I was talking about. So I already added that here. So you just go to that disk right here and then go down, and then you can install the word IO drivers from either 64-bit or the 86 or x86 or x64, whichever platform you have. Just install that driver. Just hit next and just already installed it, so it's going to give me this particular screen, but just click next, 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 and it will install all the required drivers from that for all your Word IO devices itself. All right, and also improve performance after installing this particular driver. So please make sure you install that driver to improve the performance of your VM. Let's go back to the VM page. Now, some other things, as I mentioned, you can do is snapshot management. You can actually create a snapshot from this for this particular VM. Well, we cannot create snapshot while it's running, so make sure you turn this off, and then you can create snapshots so you can recover it back again. So I'm just going to force this shutdown. And if you want to reboot, so let's say, for example, you want to turn this off, you can click on shutdown. Now, shutdown will ask, the NAS will ask the OS to do a proper shutdown, right? So it will ask Windows to shut itself down. But if the VM is stuck or it's not responding and you want to force itself down, you can click on force shutdown as well. Or if you want to reboot, you just click on power, the restart, same concept. If you do a restart, it will ask the Windows to do a proper restart. But if it's not responding, if you want to force a restart, you can just click on forced restart as well. Now I'm going to go to force shutdown. Just want to shut it down. Now, as I mentioned, you can go to snapshot management and you can actually create a snapshot. And now you can recover back. If you want to restore this back again, You can also edit the name of this particular snapshot as well, and sorry, and apply. Now, if you want to export this to an OVA, you can export this into one of the NAS paths, and then you can download that and export it to another system if you need to as well. It's very simple to export. The other thing you can do is you can delete this, obviously. You can go to settings, you can change some settings as well. You can go back to the same settings. And then lastly, shared link management. This is really important, and this is really a cool feature. Let's say if you have an external user that is not a part of your NAS user, and then you want to give them access to your VM, you can just click on add, and you can do a LAN. If it's on the same LAN, you can do a LAN. So this will be your VM's shared link. Or first, let me turn on that VM first so I can show you how it looks. Hopefully this will work because I'm on the same network. So now if you go back to settings, sorry, go back to shared link management. And if you want to share this to external user, you can use the UGREEN link. So you don't need to open any ports. Just click on that, copy this particular link and confirm. So now the user will just copy and paste that link. And it's going to use the UG link to connect the VM. Now, it works. So now your external user will have access to your. It does have full access. You have to remember that he has full access to the VM, so he can do whatever he wants. He can actually delete data, reset the VM, or he can do whatever he wants because he has full admin controls of this particular VM. Now, inside the VM, he can give him special permissions on Windows. So you don't need to. So if you give special permissions for Windows, then you have limited access, right? So that is all Windows Windows setup, right? So you can actually create another Windows account on here, and then like maybe a standard user inside Windows, and then give him that user account information. So because remember, when you give him this particular link, so let me refresh. I'm sure it can. Yeah, it's logged in right now, so it's not going to be able to. So he's going to be presented with this particular screen. So now if he can create a non-admin account and he can access that account. And now he has limited resources or limited access to that VM. But if you give him admin account, he can do whatever he wants. So just keep that in mind when you share the link outside of the network. And then let's say you have shared this, and now you want to delete that share link. Right? You just click on that, click on share link management, and delete that particular link. So now that link should no longer work. So if I refresh this page, actually has, let me see. The VM share link has expired. So you can now contact the share. So just the share link will no longer work and everything will be offline. So make sure you can delete that link, and then everything should be back to normal. Right? So that's how you can share a link outside of the NAS if you want to give them access to your VM itself. All right, so that was a quick demo. That's all I wanted to show you today. I'm gonna open this to Q&A. I'm gonna keep this particular screen online. So if you want to have Q&A, and then if I want to show something, I can show you that quickly as well. So let's look at some Q&A. Do you have any questions that you need to answer? Oh, John had a question. What is the minimum hardware specification required for a UGREEN NAS to run effectively, or to effectively run a VM? So I would say that really depends upon your VM's requirement. But a 4-core system with 8 gigs of RAM, as that's what it comes. That's our entry-level unit comes with, can run a good amount of VMs already. A Windows 11 VM should be able to run. But what you run inside that VM matters quite a bit. So if it does have a lot of if it does require heavyweight applications that requires more CPU or more RAM, then you may be limited on that. So you may have to upgrade that. But a DXP 2800, which is an entry-level NAS, we have a DH series, but it cannot run virtualization. So you start with DXP. That already comes with 4-core, 4-thread processor, 8 gigs of DDR5 RAM, so it's already pretty fast to run with. So you can run VMs effectively. What are the performance trade-off of running VMs on a dedicated NVMe SSD pool versus running it on a HDD pool with an NVMe read-write cache? So great question. So um, running it directly on the VM, all of the applications, all of that is so basically it is really quick, right? The latency is quite low because you don't need to wait for the data for the blocks of data come into the SSD when you're running it as caching, right? When you have a caching, imagine caching as when you run the VM on the caching, you all not all your applications that are inside that VM is on that SSD drive. It's because it's not requested right now. So, but when you start the application, you need to wait for that application to be loaded into the SSD. Now that's latent, that's extra latency. So that's the extra latency. Depends. Some users may not like it. Some users require immediate access to to the data. So running it on a VM, all of it, there's no wait required, right? Everything is running instantly because everything is already on the SSD drive. So you don't need to wait for the data come into the SSD for that. Writing is okay because when you write, it writes to the SSD drive and then puts it on the HDD drive. So, when you there's also latency because the NAS needs to write that data onto the hard drive as well. So there's latency over there as well. So it's more about latency. So the performance would be not significantly lower, but you're gonna see a noticeable difference when you run it as caching versus running it on the VM. It's the VM directly on the NVMe drive. Hopefully that answers your question, Xander. Thank you, Mark, for that
Okay. I have a
feedback.
question. All right.
I think we have a mic
Can I
open.
ask a question, please?
Yes.
Yeah.
What's the question,
A
Michael?
quick one. Okay, so the question is, are there any plans for disaster recovery for VMs? I run the VMs. How do I plan for disaster recovery using the user environment?
Uh, can you? I'm so sorry. You may have to repeat that one more time. Sorry about the my mic. My speakers are quite bad right here.
Okay, can you hear me now? Is it clear? Can you
Yes.
hear me? Okay, so
Yes.
the
Yes. I can
question
hear you.
is, if when we deploy virtual environments, we also plan for backup and disaster recovery. How do we plan as well to deploy in such environments?
For the disaster planning for the virtualization environment, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So that's one of the features that I'm actually requesting on the U virtualization. Right now, the only disaster management is manual backup, manual snapshot management. There is no automatic backup options available as of today. That's one of the features that I wanted to introduce on the future virtualization environment, where there will be an automatic backups and automatic snapshots available in the future virtualization versions. So unfortunately, right now for disaster management, we don't have a tool because of there's no automated management. So only thing you just have to remember because of snapshot, you can go to snapshot management and create multiple snapshots, but it has to be done manually. So you just have to remember that every few weeks or every few days, depending on how critical your data is, you can just come here and create a snapshot of that data, or you can run our sync and backup tool, and then the hosted VM, wherever the hosted VM is, you can just back up that data into another NAS or to an external hard drive, and everything can be backed up over there. But as of today, from the virtualization application point of view, there's no automation backup available. But that is something that I'm requesting already. I hope that answers your question, Michael.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, so as you can see, Michael was able to unmute himself. So if you have any further questions and you want to talk to me, you feel free to unmute yourself and ask any questions you like. All right, looks like no further questions. So thank you everyone for joining our webinar. And this is for what month of March. Month of April, we'll have another webinar. Hopefully, a new feature that I really wanted to introduce we are coming up with. I'm not going to be able to spoil that right now because I'm not really sure if we're going to be available on time. But I'm hoping that we should be available in month of April, so I can show you a quick demo on that one as well. But this will be uploaded to our YouTube channel. So if you want to play back, if you missed something, you can play back in um, you can go back to our YouTube channel and play back that video recording. But if you have any further questions or concerns, you have this email right there. Just email us and you'll be able to get answers from us. So thank you everyone for joining, and please look out for our next month's webinar email. That's going to come shortly as well. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.